Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Your Spiritual Journey. This is Dr. Bob, and this is the space and the place where we talk about things important to your soul. As always, we ask you to like us, subscribe, maybe even subscribe on Patreon to support us staying on the air. I did want to mention we are in full swing of planning for our trip to Bali next year. It'll be June of next year. The details will be on our website at yourspiritualjourneypodcast.com. And we look forward to having a full contingent of 34 people. We already have 8 people signed up. So time's a wasting. If you're interested, please visit the website. This morning's guest is Rebecca Galli, otherwise known as Becky. She's an author and columnist who writes about love, loss, and healing. She has survived significant losses: her 17-year-old brother when she was 20, her son's degenerative disease and subsequent death. She has a daughter with autism. She's divorced, and 9 days after that divorce went through, she got paralysis from transverse myelitis, a rare spinal cord inflammation that began as the flu. And that's fostered an unexpected but prolific writing career. In 2000, the Baltimore Sun published her first column about playing soccer with her son from the wheelchair that launched her From Where I Sit newspaper column. Her website, beckygalli.com, houses over 400 published columns. Her books, Rethinking Possible, a Memoir of Resilience, and Morning Fuel, daily inspirations to stretch your mind before starting your day, reflect what she believes. Life can be good no matter what. She continues to write Thoughtful Thursdays, Lessons from a Resilient Heart, a column for her subscriber family. She was a Moorhead Kane Scholar at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and she was formerly employed by IBM, where she was the recipient of the Golden Circle Award for Marketing Excellence. So she lives in Lutherville, Maryland, outside of Baltimore, and now we're going to let Becky tell her story. Becky, the mic's all yours.
Thank you. I think you like us to start off with our spiritual journeys. And I'd love to tell you about mine. I grew up in a family of faith. My dad was a minister. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. They met at Wake Forest University, where mother was studying to be a minister of music. And my father pursued his profession in seminary. So I made my profession of faith when I was 6 years old. And I like to say I've been in relationship with God since then, but not always on speaking terms. We have had some bumps along the way, but I've learned that he can take anger, he can take distance, he can take a lot of things that make that's what a relationship is, right? There are times I've been very close to him, and times I've felt abandoned. But one of the things I learned, if you can't reach up, reach out and rely on people who have similar faiths and similar beliefs, and trust their faith to help you get through a rough time.
Oh. That's a philosophy that seems to have gotten you through pretty well. You've had a lot of bumps in the road, and when I look at your book, Morning Fuel, the inspirational not only the stories that you tell, but the other writers that you quote and that you rely on is pretty amazing. And it reminded me a lot of Mark Nepo, his Awakening book, but you do quote him a couple times in there, and give credit where credit is due. I know that when I read Mark Nepo's book, I was so inspired that I bought a number of copies and sent them to friends. And your book reminds me that this is another inspirational book that I would love to buy multiple copies of and send to friends.
My goodness, well, I hope you do.
Well, I guess why I say that is that you have a way with words. Obviously, you're a columnist and a writer who has a lot to pour out and to offer people. This particular book really gives us something for every day of the year. And I was interested in, okay, what did you have to say at the beginning on January 1? And what did you have to say at the end of the year on December 25th? And did that look like it was, I don't know, full circle for the year? And I want to start with your first essay, Sparkle, because I felt that Sparkle really set the tone for the book. When I read that essay, I felt, wow, I want to go through all of this because of your approach and the mood that you set and the spirit that you showed in that essay. So could you talk about Sparkle a little bit and where that came from and why you started with that one?
Yes, and it's a friend of mine some time ago. Gosh, many years ago, I went to a kick the new year off seminar, and my friend said that instead of making New Year's resolutions, she likes to pick a word to focus on, just a word, like a theme word for the year. And so ever since that, I wasn't that great with New Year's resolutions, but I thought, well, I'll try it. And ever since then, that's what I do. Every January, I pick a word for the year. And I try to consider that as I go through the ups and downs and remind myself mid-July, how am I doing on something I made a commitment to in January. So that year it was Sparkle. And it just struck me that not only I wanted to be more engaging. I'm in a large wheelchair. I'm paralyzed. I got to sit down. I'm all the time looking, kind of guarding myself, making sure I can get through doors, making sure I don't bump into people. And it occurred to me, I really want to be more proactive about being positive. I want to show what I want to be. And I want to be a positive influence. I want to show that even though I'm in this wheelchair, I can smile. I can engage people. And I just thought Sparkle was the great word for that. So I made this commitment to smile more often when I meet people. Even I was at the Sam's and they have greeters there, and smile at them and engage with them. And I think I mentioned, I bought my blingy jewelry so that I could sparkle when I went, just, put it on to remind me to do that. And I bought some gold sequin boots. And so I physically kind of prepared myself to move into that mood. And then, when I was considering it, I thought, you know what? Not only do I want to sparkle, and let me tell you, my favorite thing to say was every once in a while, if you can't stand up, stand out, right? So I try to do the sparkle, to be a sparkle. But I also made the commitment to look for others' sparkle, to see that uniqueness about them, and focus on that, and maybe encourage them about that or compliment them on that. So it became kind of a two-way street, to make sure my attitude is positive and to look for the positives in other people. And I think that served me well, especially if I was having trouble with an individual. They might not be in the best mood, or they might have said some things that didn't track with me. And so I was like, okay, where do they sparkle? That I didn't like, but there has got to be a sparkle in there somewhere. And if you start, I think, trying to be positive and look for positive in other people, I think that just kind of elevates you, elevates your mood, and it set the tone for the year for me of looking for people's sparkle. And that was many years ago when I chose that. And I have people started giving me things. I've got this big poster that's gold glitter, and it says "Spread the Sparkle." And people give me birthday cards, and they have glitter on them, and it's just it stuck a long time. I thought, well, what better way to begin a book that I really hope will resonate with people? I hope it'll foster positivity. So that's how I wanted to kick it off. And so
Yeah.
I'm glad it seemed to speak to you too.
So, what is this year's word or theme?
This year, this year's theme, I believe this is grow. I'd like to say, instead of going through something, I want to grow through it. Because so often I think when we see challenges, we just want to get through them. We just want to shut our eyes and go through them. But I'm trying to be more cognizant of the opportunity to grow through something, even though it might be difficult.
Yeah. So it sounds to me, at least what you've said about sparkle, is that even though that's your theme for a particular year, that at the end of the year, you don't discard that theme, that you seem to hold on to it and build on it. Is that true?
Yes, I've had different words, and I think they all are like a resolution. They're supposed to improve your life, right? And so you want to that they become kind of foundational. One year it was rise, and I wouldn't rise from you can rise above things so it doesn't get to you, or it can rise within to let something flourish, or so yeah, different words for different years. One of my daily reading books, by the way, Mark Nepo is one of those daily reading books. And when his book came out, I too sent it to like 8 girlfriends for a Christmas present. I just loved it. And so I did pattern a lot of the way that I did this book after his. So I'm a big fan as well. But so in the front of these books, I'll write down, actually I do. I have the list of, every year what my word has been. And I revisit that from time to time just to see what how that one landed and how close I could keep to it. And I don't have all of them right at the top of my head, but I found it a worthwhile pursuit. And people know that about me, and they'll ask us, so what's your word for the year? And some people have started adopting it too, and we exchange words. What one are you thinking about this year? And why? It's really interesting why people choose the words they do. So it's a great conversation starter too.
Yeah. So there's a big difference, or maybe you don't see it as a big difference, between your professional life at IBM and what you're doing now, and how, I guess, in that changeover from marketing to really writing and being a columnist, what was it that maybe triggered? I understand the events in your life maybe forcing you to make a change of sorts, but what was it, I guess, that in your mental processes that said, okay, I'm going this direction now? And was that a head decision? Was it a heart decision? Was it a spirit decision? Or maybe it was all of those.
Yeah, that's a great question. So it really was a journey. I worked for IBM. I had my, the beginning of writing has to start with the loss of my brother, my 17-year-old brother, when he was in a water skiing accident. And I was having a really hard time processing that. He was that kid, he was president of the student council. He was a church leader. He was an athlete. He was a musician. He had plans to go to Wake Forest. He was going to be an attorney, get into politics, the whole thing. It was just the total package. In fact, his last thing that he wrote before he had his water skiing accident was his essay to Wake Forest. And the last line of that essay was, I would change nothing, which was just really profound. Very hard for me to take at that time. That's one of the times that God and I weren't on real good speaking terms there, because it just didn't make sense. Because I would have changed a lot about things for him, that he, wouldn't have had the accident, that he wouldn't have died, that he would have recovered, all of those things. So anyway, in that process, Dad said, Becky, journal about it. It's a wonderful thing to be able to talk about it. And at the time I was in college, so I started doing that. I can remember these yellow sheets of paper, legal size paper, and I would just journal about all my feelings. And to that point, it was an interesting learning as well, because we all handled that loss very differently. Mm-hmm. My dad was very public in his way of expressing his grief, his anger, but still faithful, and he could do that from a pulpit, and actually became a noted lecturer on grief. His book was "Sit Down, God, I'm Angry," that he penned 20 years after my brother's death. But so he could be public. My mom was very private. She was in support groups for parents who had lost children. My sister handled it very differently. She was only 17 months younger than my brother, and they were tag teaming in high school, and she wanted to be with him. And so they had to get her professional counseling with that. I was in college with my girlfriends, and they kind of moved me along because they knew Forrest, but it wasn't their loss as much as Rachel's friends. It was a group loss there. So I learned a lot about grief and processing and how people do that differently. And for me, it was helpful to keep moving with my girlfriends and to also journal about it. So life rolled along. Finished up at Carolina, married the man of my dreams. We had 4 children. 2 had special needs, one with autism, one with epilepsy, and a degenerative disease as well as that. And during those times when my son, my firstborn son Matthew, presented with seizures, again I journaled. I didn't understand. How can this 3-month-old child be such racked with this thing, and people couldn't stop him? And so again, journaling helped me through that. I eventually divorced journaling helped me through that, just to write through those feelings. The 3 years of counseling, we decided it was the best thing. I told our therapist, if we're not going to have an amazing marriage, we're going to have an amazing divorce. And we did. We're still friendly after all these years, and have family outings together, vacation together, that kind of thing. But all through this, writing helped. But what crystallized it was the paralysis. 9 days after I was paralyzed, I was paralyzed in 6 hours. Transverse myelitis hit in the middle of the night, and by the morning I couldn't move my legs. So at the time, we were very hopeful that I would regain total mobility, because a third of people recover fully. Only a third recover partially, and another third have no recovery at all. So after all the things I've been through, I'm like, maybe it's my time for a break to be in that third that recover fully. So I had great hopes of that. But in the meantime, I had to wait to see if it recovered. There isn't anything you could do to really coax it. It either was going to come back or it wasn't. I prepared as well as I could, therapy 3 times a week, all that kind of stuff. But in the meantime, I had an old college friend reach out to me. This is 1997, when the internet was just grabbing hold, and he emailed me because my dad had written a newspaper column about my strange infection, they called it at that time, transverse myelitis. And so my friend Scott emailed me. He says, "Is that you?" And I'm thinking, is this me? Am I going to be this way for the rest of my life? But I hadn't seen him in 10, 15 years. And so I updated him. And one by one, I told him the stories of, my marriage and my children and my divorce and this paralysis. And then I started talking about life in the wheelchair, and I would write him about those. And he would share the stories that I would read, I would write for him, and I would share my stories. And this is before social media or blogs or anything like that. And we kind of developed a little audience there. One of my girlfriends wrote back and said, "Becky, you realize you have readers?" So I never planned to be a writer. I never really was drawn to it, but it was actually therapeutic for me. And I think it was connective for me as well, a way to stay connected to people, because my legs weren't working anymore. So that's a very long answer to kind of what kicked it off. But that article about playing wheelchair soccer with my son, I was guarding the garage door opener, so I'd wheel back and forth, and he'd try to shoot. And so that was a friend of the church helped me polish it up, and that was in the Baltimore Sun, and that led to the From Where I Sit column. And then I did a Tuesdays with Madison column, which was about life with a child with autism. And I continued my dad's column called Looking Homeward, about family life stories. So it really launched that career in a way I never expected. And I've just kind of leaned into it. It's been natural. I wanted a memoir to try to put everything in one place, and that was Rethinking Possible. And when that was published in 2017, a lot of the questions I got was, how do you do it? How do you manage this life? And one of the ways was through like Mark Nepo's book and other books, or Daily Reader. And that's why I decided to take some of these stories and put them in a Daily Reader so others could connect with me that way.
Yeah. Well, there's so much richness, and as I looked at some of the reviews, and I just want to quote from some of them, that this book is about how to meet grief with grace. Each daily mini essay offers a shot of positivity to start your day, with reflective takeaway questions for the reader that are thought-provoking and insightful, and profound lessons to live mindfully. And I thought that that review really captured just about everything in a nutshell. Uh, because as I thought about this interview and how I would describe the book to people, I thought, well, somebody's already written a pretty good description, so I'll just read that one. Uh, what is it that provides you with this positivity? You know, what is it do you think about your past or your life up to this point that has kept you positive? Are you just a cockeyed optimist all the time, or how does that work?
No, sometimes I think I live on the edge of a pity pit because, any one of these I could just go, why and why me? And then just go down, down, down. But I think I was, and I didn't realize this till I wrote the memoir. I think watching my parents cope with the death of their only son at age 17, who had so much promise, I think I had a front row seat to coping honestly, with a lot of effort, but just incredible confidence and positivity. Even though they might dip, they floated. The hope came to the top, and the positive nature of them really instilled me. My sister and I we don't really know any other way to live because of the way that we were brought up, and the core values that we have of being honest about our situation. If we're angry, we say it. If there's pain, we say ouch. But we also try to, I call it, getting people in the boat with you who can support you wherever you are, whether you're up, down, just coasting, whatever, who can be a resource for you, and depend on that resource and let them enrich you, and rely on them to keep you moving. And the third thing, be honest, get people on the boat with you, and keep moving. My dad's favorite expression, or the one that I quote him the most on, is what's planned is possible. And so I always have plans and revisit those and make sure they're workable. And my mom's was always about getting your ducks in a row. Are you organized? Are you in a way that you can move through the day in a systematic way? So they left me with all these little sound bites, which I'm very grateful for, and also a life that was really well lived and intentionally lived, centered on faith, centered on family, and it was just their positive nature. And I didn't really realize until you start talking to a lot of other people, not everybody has that kind of environment where you grow up, but you don't know what you have sometimes until you lose it, or until you're exposed to other situations where they didn't have that kind of influence. So I'm very lucky that way that I have that, and so it's foundational for me.
Yeah. I recently had someone on the show who has twin sons, and one of the twins is autistic. And we talked about raising a son with autism. You happen to have a daughter with autism, which is unusual, I understand, because it's usually found in males. So when did you get that diagnosis? How early in your child's life did that happen? And how have you coped with that situation?
So because of my first son, Matthew, and his epilepsies, I was hyper mindful of milestones and what age they're supposed to babble, what age they're supposed to do this, because Matthew lost milestones as the seizures increased. His function reduced. So when Madison was born, she was born after Matthew. At 19 months, I knew that she wasn't hitting some milestones. So I went in, I found a developmental pediatrician, somebody who specialized in that. And so he did, she was diagnosed at a very early age. So I had her in different programs, infants and toddlers programs, therapy programs. But it really wasn't until 1997, again, like 3 months after I was paralyzed. Madison was in a special classroom for children with autism. And she still was pretty much nonverbal. And this was when she was 5 years old at this time. She had a birthday after I was paralyzed. So we got a flyer in the backpack of Madison when she came out from school, and one of her classmates' parents had said, come see how Mason learns. And Mason was a classmate, also on the spectrum, and they were using a therapy that I had never heard of that was helping her son talk. So I went to this friend, Polly's home, and learned about this therapy, began to use it with Madison, and Madison started having language. It was, she could know her name, her address, her phone number, colors, that kind of thing. Just phenomenal, all because a parent had shared that with me. So that information didn't come from my pediatrician, didn't come from the educator, even though she was getting good services from both. It came from a parent that dared risk, sharing information, inviting people to her home. So because of that interaction, a small group of us said, we need to share our discoveries among each other so that we can help each other. And again, this is back before Google or any of the other ways that online you could get resources. And so in 2000, we created Pathfinders for Autism, a nonprofit that was designed to improve the lives of those with autism and their families. And this year will be in our 25th year of this organization. And we serve like 20,000 people annually with free family programs. We do medical and first responder training so people will know how to deal with people on the spectrum if they encounter them in the workplace, or in emergencies. So that was really a game changer for me, is to create resources, be honest with what you got, create the resources around what you need so that we've shared what we're learning along the way. And Madison now is 33, and she still cannot read or write or ever be left alone. And right now she's in a group home not too far from me. I get to see her when I want to. And she's in an active day program where she's out in the community every single day.
Yeah.
So you never fully exhale, though. I mean, life with autism, I like to say you need some big shock absorbers, because you just never know when there's going to be another bump where you need, a behavior goes this way or a service goes that way, and you need support. And Pathfinders is there to help with that. So I'm really grateful that's in place now and doing so well.
Yeah. There's a pretty well-known podcast out there now. It's called the Telepathy Tapes. I don't know if you've heard of it or not.
I have not.
But it has changed my whole way of thinking about autism and autistic children. And I highly recommend it. The person who produces it and narrates most of it is Kai Dickinson, K-Y. And what she has discovered, and she takes the audience through her discoveries as she learns more and more about autistic children. And the fact that many non-speaking autistic children do communicate via telepathy. And once she made that discovery and started to dig into it, she discovered that they are not only able to communicate with caregivers and family members with telepathy, but with each other over long distances. And finding that there's this one location that's up there in the ether where about 1,000 of them get together. They call it the Hill, and they all communicate telepathically and teach each other things. And it's just a fascinating podcast. And the research that Kai Dickinson has really pioneered and now has, and in fact, they're now making a movie out of this. And the first therapy that a lot of the parents learned was spelling. And I don't know if that's the therapy that you learn. No, it's a different therapy. Okay. But that helped with communication, that they could sit at a computer and learn to spell their thoughts. But anyway, I don't want to digress from your story, but I wanted to let you know that that's out there since you have this organization of Pathfinders for Autism. It would be
I'm sure they're aware of it. I'll check it out with them.
it would be something to share. But it made me look at this one autistic child who's in our church as a very special person. Because sometimes with autism, I understand that you're not sure there's somebody in there if they're nonverbal. And people think that an autistic child cannot learn, when that's not true at all. So anyway, it's just things that I'd learned from this podcast that made me look differently at autistic children. So getting back to your book, because I talked about looking at the beginning on January 1st and then to see what you had on December 25th, and how you wrapped up this whole journey that you take us on as we go through day by day for an entire year. And with the ending of your book, you have a section called Topic References. And that's divided into 8 sections. And you reference the different days where you've addressed each of those 8 topics, and then invite the reader to journal, because you have space at the end of the book for them to write some notes about their thoughts on those various topics. And I found that I was really drawn to that. Like, after reading quite a few of your entries and then looking at the way that you had them organized by topic, and it made me say, boy, I really want to do this. This is this is really great. And then you extend an invitation to join Thoughtful Thursdays. So could you talk about Thoughtful Thursdays and where that came from and what that's all about?
Yes, so I've been doing that for many years. It's a one of my editors suggested that would be a great way for me to connect with my audience of, the readers. Once I had done these newspaper columns, I decided to be a little bit more interactive and actually write the column and send it out. When I was still doing the newspaper columns, sometimes I would take that column and send it out. But then I just started doing online. Went away from print, and I had another instructor when we were talking about. It was a class on connecting with your reader, how to most authentically connect with your reader. He said, you need to figure out why you write. And once you've figured out why you write, keep that foremost in your mind as you're connecting with your reader. And I thought that was brilliant advice. And so I'm like, okay, why am I writing? Why am I doing this? And what I came up with, I believe life can be good no matter what. And I write to remind myself that. And so the format for these Thoughtful Thursdays is what happened in this week, or since the last time. It's not every week now. It's when I have something to say, what has reminded me that life can be good no matter what. And when I tee up on that, it might be nature, it might be an interaction, it might be a quote, it might be just observing a kindness and conveying that. But the key part about that, what I believe life can be good no matter what, is not life is good no matter what. Life can be good. And the can means work. It is not just, it doesn't automatically be good. Sometimes we have to work at it. Sometimes we have to look for the sparkle. Sometimes we have to parcel out resources that, that one wasn't too good for me. So I better find another resource for this because that one's not working out. And so there's a lot of effort it takes to believing life can be good no matter what. As I like to say, I've had a lot of what, there is a lot of what in my life, but, despite it all, I try to be faithful. I try to be positive. I try to be encouraging. And writing about things like that is a power boost to me. And so sometimes it's like, I need to write. And sometimes it's like life has been sideways for 3 weeks now. Let me tell you what happened and let me tell you how I got through it, that kind of thing, or who helped me, and give credit for that. Because there's a lot of these little angels that pop in from time to time that just remind me that I am not alone. And there's help, but sometimes you have to be willing to ask for it, which is really hard for me. It's really hard to ask for help, but as they say, asking for help is a strength, not a weakness. To be able to say that you need support.
Yeah, I think that asking for help is humbling. It makes you vulnerable, but it's also a way to show love to another person, because you are used to helping other people. And from what I read about you, you get joy from being supportive and service to other people. And it's important to receive as well as to give, because people also need to support you and feel needed, just as you like to feel needed and supportive. So it can be humbling and make you feel vulnerable, but it's also being of service to others. If if you can think about it that way, give them the opportunity to serve you. So in looking at December 25th, your approach to the end of the year, I found very enlightening, and I really liked it, because it wasn't just about making a New Year's resolution and looking forward. It was really the importance of looking backward over the year and seeing what lessons were there to learn. And my impression of the advice that you were giving the reader was that if you could look back through your calendar, look back through your journal entries, and really take a hard look at the growth that you experienced during the year, but also the obstacles that you had to overcome and the opportunities that you had. So I see that as the advice you're giving others. I'm curious to know if you actually do that yourself every year, and if that is a practice that you've instituted for yourself.
I think that it's something that I definitely consider as I'm looking for the New Year's word. And I look back to say, how did last year's word serve me? Mm-hmm. And I think the impetus for that end of year, December 31st column, or that entry in Morning Fuel, was my father's belief that and he used to close his service with this: no experience is wasted unless you let it be. And I really like that challenge of no experience is wasted unless you let it be. So it has us look for the sparkle. It has us look for meaning. It has us look for purpose. It has us look for something. So it is an examination of our experiences to see what we can learn from that. So I take that one to heart around the end of the year. It's a slow time for me. Usually family is in other places, and so it's a good reflective time to see what I've learned in that last year. I like the kind of the checklist that's on that page of, have you done this? Have you done that? It's a good quick one, and that's one of the reasons that I put it in print. Yes, yeah. I can always find it if I don't go through it mentally. It's like, okay, last day of the year, how'd I do? So, and hopefully that'll be the way with other readers, is they can use that as a checkpoint just to see how they're doing. And I think it's a pretty systematic way to review things.
Yeah.
See what they learn.
So that's your annual practice. I'm also curious to know if you have any particular daily spiritual practices that help you get through day-to-day life.
Yes. Well, I get up when I'm on my best days, or when I get up and I can watch the sunrise, because I really feel like nature kind of can kickstart your day with the sun coming up and the confidence that nature can bring about every day it's going to come up, So I love to do that. I have a sunroom, so I have sunrise comes up in off the deck out from my sunroom. And then I have 3 or 4 actually a whole little caddy full of daily readers. And so I'll read sometimes all 7 or 8 of them, and sometimes just a few of them, to, same thing with Morning Fuel, stretch my mind before starting my day. And then I'll have lemon water, some coffee, and then I journal. I try to journal every morning, or at least 3 or 4 times a week, as to what's going on. And I was in the hospital with sepsis a few years ago. And when I came back, I was so impatient with my progress after being in the hospital for 2 weeks. And so I was like, you know what, let's just monitor your progress. And so it's very practical for me. Sometimes, what's going on with your body? What's better than it was yesterday? What's worse? Than my life? What happened in my life that's of significance? I do 3 things that I'm grateful for. right off the bat. And then I have a prayer list, and I write down the people that I'm trying to remember in prayer that day. And then I have my goals and then my accomplishments. And then whatever insight that I have come up with since the last time I was journaling. So if I do all what I just said, then I have the best day ever. Sometimes it's more challenging than others. My body's misbehaved and I can't get out of bed like I'd like to, or something unexpected happens in the morning. But that's my practice, and I do it more often than not. And when I do it, I'm fueled. I am ready for the day. So it's worth the effort. And it's really become one of those things. It's like I don't quite feel right. I didn't get to all of that. So I'm trying to be. That's my goal.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like if you get all that in, your day's about half over by the time you prepare for the day.
Right. And sometimes my sister and I say sometimes, well, you can start your day anytime you want. Like if the morning was too crazy, then you pick it up in the afternoon. So we try to be gentle with ourselves.
Yeah. Well, the subtitle of your book is Daily Inspirations to Stretch Your Mind. So they're good to start your day and stretch your mind at the same time. So we have now reached the point of the podcast where I always ask the guest to leave the audience with some words of wisdom. Now, you have 366 days worth of wisdom here. So I'd prefer that you don't go through all of those, but given that you have this one shot at this particular audience, what would you like to leave them with?
I think it's important to be honest about your situation, your feelings, and your capacity to deal with it, to make sure you have people to support you, and to keep going. Those are the things that sustain me. My life is grounded in faith, and I've found different ways to nurture that through all the ups and downs of relationship with God. So I don't know if that was one, but that's kind of it in a nutshell, how I keep going and what I would offer people to try.
Okay. Well, audience, the book is Morning Fuel. I recommend you buy multiple copies and give some to your friends because they'll thank you in the end. And from what you've heard today, take what resonates with you and incorporate it into your life. Put the rest on the shelf until you're ready to deal with it. And until next time, this has been your spiritual journey.